Hello everyone and welcome again to my channel Press F for Fashion. I'm trying to post videos regularly, so I hope from now on I should be consistent on the channel this year, and all I ask from you all to like, share and subscribe to this channel to keep me motivated. So in this tutorial we are going to learn how to do dot variation in Clo3d using slash and spread method, pivot transfer and some unconventional methods from the book Patternmaking for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong, and the buying links for this book and the other books that I recommend are in the description below. It won't cost you any extra money and it will only help out this channel. Now with that out of our way, we can start this dot variation tutorial, and the requirement for this tutorial is not measurements but front and back basic bodice block. So if you don't have the basic bodice block, you can create it by watching my first tutorial video on the basic bodice and come back. But before we start the actual tutorial, I think I must give you a small brief on dot variation so that you can have some clarity on what dot variation is and why it is used. And if you are familiar or you just want to jump to the tutorial part, I have provided timestamp on this tutorial video which will directly take you to that part. If you are still here, now it is theory time. The principle of dot variation is that a dot can be transferred to any location around the pattern's outline from a designated pivotal point without affecting the size or fit of the garment. The dot axis, which is the space between the dot legs, can be used as gathers, pleats, tuck, darts, style lines or ease. This creative use of the dot axis is called a dot equivalent, and the most important thing to remember about the dot is that it should end before reaching the pivotal point and should not go beyond it, especially the pivotal point of the bust. There are two methods of applying this technique, slash and spread and pivotal transfer, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how to use both of these methods for the dot variation in Clo3d. So we first start with charting the dot location, where I'm going to draw guidelines from bust point to each dot location. Besides the fact you can transfer the dot anywhere around the pattern, these selected dot locations has specific names, and if you are a fashion design student or a pattern maker, it is essential to know. Now let's begin with tracing the front and back bodice pattern, then clearing all the pattern's internal lines. Most importantly, only trace the dot lines that is originating from the bust point. Cut off the lower dot if you have traced both of them. Now with internal polygon line tool selected, draw the dot guidelines respectively. Here, right click on the bust point, go to add perpendicular internal line, then click on y-axis, and in the dialog box, left click on both options and hit OK. So here we have the side dot on the left at side seam and the bust level dot on the right at the center front. Again, center front neck point to bust point is center front neck dot, center front waist point to bust point is center front waist dot, shoulder point to bust point is shoulder dot. Now to create midpoints on neckline, shoulder line and armhole, right click on each of them one by one and create the midpoint on the respective lines. Then draw internal lines from each of these midpoints to the bust point to create the mid neck, mid shoulder and mid armhole dot. Now the last but not the least dot is a French dot, which can be at any angle below the side dot. Here I am taking 2 inches up from the waist point and drawing the guideline to the bust point, and now we can name all these guidelines. So for our first dot variation, simply trace the front basic bodice block and using the tracing tool, draw a line from center front waist to bust point to create a center front waist dot. For this variation, we are going to use the slash and spread method, which is in my opinion is the easiest one, as Clo3d has a dedicated feature for it. To do this, with pattern tool selected, press hold, shift and select both the dot legs, then right click on it. Then in the pop-up menu, click on rotate dot option. Now go to the center front waist point, left click to select it, and hovering the cursor, take the guideline to the bust point, then left click on it. Now select the center front waist to dot part to relocate it and left click on it, then move it till the right dot leg completely closes off with the left dot leg, and to end the rotation, simply left click on it, and now we have created the center front waist dot. Now for the finished pattern block, we have to go down 5/8 of an inch from the burst point as the dart should end before reaching the pivotal point. First, we are going to use a tedious method as it can be done this way too, and I will show you the much easier method later in the video. To do this, with pattern tool selected, right click on the burst point and in the pop-up menu, go to the add perpendicular internal line and click on local. Then in the dialog box, type in 165 degree in the angle option and 5/8 of an inch in the length option and hit OK. Now draw the new dart legs to the extended point. Now as you can see, we have an uneven hem here, so now we need to draw it to make it even and smoother. To do this, go to edit pattern tool, click and hold press, then select the edit curve point option, then zoom into the hem and convert the segment point to curve point. Now delete the unnecessary curve points and blend the hem smooth using the remaining curve points. Then trace the pattern with the new dart, which is the lower one, to trace the finished pattern block. Now to test the fit of the garment, simply trace the back bodice, then create the corresponding stitching lines to seams and darts using free sewing tool or segment stitch tool. After you are done, then with pattern transform tool selected, left click to select, then right click on it and in the pop menu, click on create symmetric with swing. Repeat the same for the other block too. Now create the stitch line at the center front and center back to close the garment. Now go to the display option in the 3D window and click on show arrangement point option. Now select the front and back pattern block and position it correctly over the arrangement points on the avatar, and after you are done with positioning, hit the space bar to simulate, and now you can see if you have done it correctly or not. Now for the next variation, we are going to use the pivot transfer method. To do this, first trace a fresh pattern with dart from burst point. Then by using internal polygon line tool, draw a line from mid neck to the burst point. Mark the neck point C and the dart point A. Then select the trace tool and marquee select the whole pattern. Now right click on it and in the pop-up menu, click on the trace as internal line or shapes option. Then right click anywhere in the 2D window and in the pop-up menu, click on lock all pattern outlines option. Now go to edit pattern tool, hold press left click and choose the transform point or segment option. Again marquee select the whole pattern, then go to the middle point of the selection and double click on it to activate the pivot point. Then by holding press left click, drag this pivot point to the burst point. Now go to the top handle of the selection and hold press left click on it, then rotate the selection anti-clockwise until the other dart point aligns completely with the dart point A. Then release the selection. Now unlock all the pattern outlines by using internal polygon line tool. Draw a line again from point C to the burst point, then select the trace tool and trace the lines from C to point A. And for the other half of the pattern, trace the other side of C to A from the rotated traced internal lines pattern. Then right click on it and click on trace as a pattern option and place it away from it. Now delete the previous front pattern on the 3D avatar and replace it with the newly traced pattern. In order to sew it, position it and simulate it again, follow the same drill as we did in the previous one, and do not forget to shift the dart 5/8 of an inch from the burst point. I have used an easier method for it, so keep an eye for it. Here I am just going to briefly demonstrate two more variation using the slash and spread method, and after this we will be doing dart relocation for the back bodice pattern using some unconventional method, so hang on till the end. Now for the back neck dart variation, trace the back bodice pattern, including the HBL line below shoulder dart as it is shown here. Then create a midpoint on the neckline, and with internal polygon line tool selected, draw a line at an angle from mid-neck point to the HBL line. Again, draw a line from the left side shoulder dart point to join the mid-neck line at the HBL line. Now with the pattern tool selected, cut these one by one by right clicking on it, then clicking on the cut option. Then click and drag this cutout pattern piece by just dragging it to its original position as before. Then select the transform pattern tool and click on the cut off section of the pattern. Then go to the middle point and double click on it to activate the pivot point and drag it to the intersection point on the HBL line. Now by clicking on the top handle and hold pressing it, rotate the cutout part clockwise until the shoulder dart point touches the other dart leg, and then release the selection. Now to create a new shoulder line, draw a line from neck to the shoulder point. After that, with pattern tool selected, hover the cursor near neck point on the first dart leg, then right click on it, choose split, and in the dialog box type in 3 inches in the line 1 option, then hit OK. Repeat the same for the other dart leg as well. Then join these 2 points and split this line into half by using the uniform split option. Now draw the new dart legs from neck point to the midpoint of this line, and we are done with the neck dart. After this, we can trace the back bodice including the new neck dart and shoulder line and excluding the old shoulder dart. And to sew it and simulate it, we can follow the same drill as previous ones. And now we have finally reached to the last part of the tutorial, where we are going to get rid of the back body shoulder dart by transferring the excess to the armhole. To do this, trace a fresh back bodice block and delete all the internal lines except the HBL line as it is shown here. Now to create a perpendicular line from dart intersection point to the HBL line, with pattern tool selected, right click on the dart point, go to add perpendicular internal line and click on local option. Then in the dialog box type in 180 degree in the angle option and reduce the length enough so that it doesn't cross the HBL line and hit OK. Now right click on this extended point and in the pop-up menu click on extend or trim and add point to the internal line from this point to the internal line. Now cut this line and the HBL line from this point to the arm. Then click and drag this cutout pattern piece by just dragging it to its original position as before. After positioning it correctly, double click on the midpoint of the selection to activate the pivot point and drag it to the intersection point on the HBL line. Now hold press left click on the top handle of the selection and rotate it anti-clockwise till the dart leg completely closes off with the other dart leg. Now to blend the armhole, draw a short, slightly curved internal line from the upper dart leg point to the lower armhole line, which you can correct it after tracing the pattern. And now we are done with removing the shoulder dart. To trace it, sew it and simulate it, follow the same drill as the previous ones. This is it. I hope you have now learned to relocate darts around the pattern and removing back shoulder dart by using different methods, which can be very useful when incorporating these techniques into your designs. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And if you have any question or suggestion, please write it down in the comment section. I will try my best to answer it all. I'll see you all again in the next tutorial video soon. Till then, keep pressing F and peace out.